Welcome to another episode of the Iceberg Theory podcast. Today, we are talking about money, something that we all want in abundance. Money often mirrors more than numbers. Have you ever wondered why two people earning almost the same amount end up in two different financial lives? In this episode of the Iceberg Theory podcast, we explore our relationship with money and how it reveals who we are, our priorities, beliefs, and sometimes our own insecurities. My guest today is Monica Kothari, the founder of Beta Capital and a financial investment expert. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Monica, welcome to the Iceberg Theory podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Neetu, for having me, and the pleasure is actually all mine.
Glad we are doing this session today because as I shared in my introduction that money is something that we all want in abundance, but when it comes to managing money, there's more than just budgets and finances and tracking expenses. And that's what we're going to deep dive into today, understanding the iceberg of the money mindset for people. So starting with the first thing that I have on my mind to for you to explore, help us explore that on the surface of how people spend money, save money, the mindset. Um, what do you think goes beyond this the surface that we see of money saving and money mindset for people?
On the surface level, I think people just look at money as how much they are making and how much they are spending, and that's where the equation ends. But if you look under the surface, I mean, the millionaires or the billionaires or financially free people, they're always looking below the surface, wherein your mindset resides, your emotion resides, the investments reside there, right? A lot of us are ending the equation on earning and spending, and that's what we're doing all through our life. We're never looking at the other facets of money, the energy of money, the work that money requires from your end, not just for earning it, but for nurturing it, for growing it, for giving value to it. That those are some things, key things that I think even in my consultation I have seen that my clients also have missed it out
Yeah.
because it never spoken for. Money mindset was, I think it never existed in the syllabus also. In our own, I think mindset word itself never existed. It always looked something which is, very foreign, something which is only for the rich, for the millionaire. But actually, that's what has taken them there.
True, very true. This explains that how managing money uh, actually matters with the mindset that you come from. It's not the amount of money that you have on hand, but with the mindset. And like you mentioned, the rich have a different way of managing their money. It's not because they have more money they manage it better, but the mindset, they work under the surface. So now going into, since you deal with this day in and day out, do you think there are different kind of personalities that exist when it comes to money management?
Definitely, but there's one common thing in all the kind of personality. People think that money management is actually a math problem, but it's not a math problem anymore because your Excel sheets is doing the math, the app is doing the maths, the tech is doing all the maths that you want to do. You have calculator. We are no longer in that 70s where you have to put everything on paper and do everything manually. Today's time, you download your the PDF or the Excel of your bank account, you put it on app, you put it on Excel, and everything is done by the tech. So it's no longer the math problem, and that's where your mindset pattern comes into place. Money management wise, there are people of different different temperament, I can say. Some are very conservative, some are very very explosive and aggressive in their investments, but what binds all of them together and their growth is, again, what is the mindset that they are following in their uh, you know money management journey. So the conservatives are those who are always concentrating on saving. They're squeezing out themselves, whether you go to buy a tomato from the market, or whether you go to buy, even if you are dealing with coaches, you're always in a habit of asking for discount and trying to save every penny wherever you can. That comes from conservative mindset. On the other hand, the aggressive mindset, they are always looking for more ways to make more. Of course, they're also thinking about saving and investing, but they are also thinking about more ways to make money out of the current situation that they are in. It could be in business, it could be in job, it could be negotiating with your managers. So they're always hyperactive, they are proactive in taking action. And um, whether you are a conservative money manager or an aggressive money manager, it does not mean that you're of the same risk appetite. That's another facet of money management. How risk what's your risk appetite? How much can you risk on the table to earn that money, right? So what I'm talking here is only about the management style, but not the risk appetite of the money manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you mentioned this, that, one is aggressive, one is conservative. So, somebody who's trying to save every penny that they can, and the other one is aggressive in maybe different form. Is there one better than the other?
Yes, I would. You know why? Maybe it's my bias, but why is one better than the other? Because people have this mindset that your money is limited, right? But in reality, all of us come with limited time on this earth, right? We all have the 80, 100, or 120 years that's written against our fate, or whatever you can say. If you're always thinking about saving, squeezing out the last buck, you're actually draining out a lot of your energy and time into staying limited in your resources. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, your money is what is unlimited. You can always earn more. I mean, come on, look, every year the top billionaires are expanding their net worth by over double digits. So we cannot say they are the proof of they're the living proof that money is not limited. It's the time that is limited. And the conservative money manager, I feel, is actually uh, spending a lot of energy into saving money, and that same energy can be channeled into earning more money, which an aggressive money manager does. He's always looking for more investments, he's always looking for more passive income sources, and he's also taking a bit of a risk and playing with the money, so that your playfulness of money comes into picture, playfulness of life comes into picture, which conservatives kind of compromise on. I mean, this could be controversial, but this is what I believe in.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was just reading in the news today that there was a study that was done, and in India this year itself, 2025, the top 1% of the rich have grown by 62%. And I was amazed to read that. And when you look at their lifestyle, when you look at how they live and how they spend, it's not with the mindset of scarcity that, oh, even though I'm so rich, I should not be spending because, it's going to end what I have. And I think this is the mindset most of us who have, say, a limited source of income. We come with that mindset that, oh, I've got this 10,000. I need to make sure that I save 5,000 and I spend only 5,000 out of it. And that 5,000 that you save, you're so guarded of that 5,000 that, you're, I think from a perspective of money energy that I understand, you're blocking the energy to grow.
Yes.
Yeah, so
It
I'm glad
also
you
comes,
share this.
it also stems from your childhood scripts. Firstly, a lot of our parents uh, did not know what is enough, because nothing was ever enough. Our parents, at least my parents, came from a very different background. They grew up in a very different family. They grew up in a very different household than what I grew up in. I grew up in quite a lavish lifestyle, in fact, and my children are growing up in a different household than I grew up in, right? Because it's different
Yeah.
generation, different monies. But at every point in time, there is one thing that I felt is, what is your definition of enough should be clear, so that beyond that, you can start taking risk. You can
Yeah.
start enjoying this life. You can have your bases covered, like your insurance, your emergency fund, and what makes you feel safe and secure. Like, I highly recommend Maslow's law of hierarchy here, wherein you can read about it and go, first take care of your safety and then your security, and then you can think about your expansion and stuff. So if you know you're enough, if you know the number that is enough for you to lead a very comfortable life, and you reach there, um, ideally a little bit before that you should start taking more risks. You should start enjoying. If you're looking for a timeline perspective, you should start enjoying life, like like you said, the rich lifestyle. Go for better food, go for better housing, go for better societies, go for better people to work with, and start making bigger choices for yourself. Because once you start making bigger choices for yourself, two things happen. Number one, you are already breaking your childhood limiting beliefs and childhood money scripts, that money is not to be wasted, money is not for luxury, jitna chadar hai utne hi pair phailao, because you're literally working to grow your chadar here, right? You're expanding.
Absolutely.
So our childhood belief was that the chadar will never expand, but look at these rich people. You said 62%, उनकी chadar 62% expand हुई है एक साल में. So at least we can think about 20-25% every year. That's the bare minimum we should be thinking about.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that, thing about jitni pair hai, utni chadar phailao. I remember in one of the interviews, Shah Rukh Khan talking about, मेरे पैर तो इतने ही रहेंगे, बड़ी तो मेरी चादर ही हो सकती है. So
That's
I'm
where
going to
I got
spread
it.
the chadar, not my legs are going to be just that much. So I need to increase it so much that, I can accommodate a lot more along with me to live a lifestyle that I want to live. So, this, and you rightly mentioned that this mindset comes from our childhood. And that is where, I really want you to speak a little more about where, we all understand we're all a product of our childhood, whether it's our emotions, our intelligence, our ability to see things or not see things, managing money, managing relationships, managing conflicts. All of this comes from how we have experienced childhood. And bringing this into the space of money mindset. There's some emotions, thoughts, fears, and, beliefs that we pick up as children, whether it's coming through parents or, extended families, or when we see our parents struggling for something, and that creates a mindset in us. Can you throw some light on how do emotions play a role here, bringing in from a childhood story perspective?
Yeah. So I feel that our money management skills is all learned in our childhood, because I'm already seeing that in my kids. And my younger one, Kashvi, who is close to 3.5 years old, she is so fearless about money. She's anything she wants, she's like, Mama, order kar do na. She's that abundant in everything, okay? Whether it's a toy or her favorite stationery, anything, there is no concept of khatam ho jayega in her dictionary. खत्म हो जाएगा तो पापा और मंगवा देंगे. My father will bring more for me. That's the kind of mindset she is, that nothing is ever going to get over. If it's over in one shop, there is always another shop which is available. दूसरे ऐप पे देख लो, दूसरी जगह चलते हैं. So that's one thing I have learned from her, कि the same thing goes with money. In our childhood, we learned that everything was scarce. I think we were all as a society under that impression that electricity waste ho rahi hai, pani waste ho raha hai. Even if you're taking long showers, you would be under that guilt that you're wasting natural resources, or सिर्फ दिवाली पे बहुत सारी लाइटें जलाएंगे. So a lot of small thing actually compounds into your money also. And in fact, I was also exactly saving my money exactly like that about 10 years ago, budgeting for every penny, trying to save every single rupee. If I'm going on a school picnic, I would not eat my favorite snack. I would choose the cheapest one so that I can save the 5 rupees for when I need it. I never had that idea that I can go and ask my father or my grandfather more. That idea never came into me. So as I grew up, I was always confined to that salary which I was withdrawing from EY, that this is my chadar. I have to take care of everyone from this. All my gifting, my necessities, my splurge fund, everything needs to be taken care from that. But it never occurred to me that I can have more sources of income. In fact, even when I was into 3 years of motherhood with Ruhi, that's when somewhere around the line Beta Capital took off, right? And only then I realized that, look, I can have multiple sources of income. That's how your chadar actually grows. You add sources of income and then you hire more people and then you serve more people. So that's exactly how you have to branch out and increase. Uh, this never came into my being because I did not have that mindset in my family wherein you are concentrating on multiple business or multiple asset classes or investing in yourself. I mean, for my father, I think investment was only real estate or a gold or a silver. Investing in yourself as a fundamental investment never existed back then, right? That is our childhood script कि खुद पे क्या खर्च करना. मैं तो ऐसे ही, we will sail through like this. So all of these habits was inherited from the childhood. By the age of 10, you know how society works. अच्छा, मेरे मम्मी पापा के पास इतना ही है, मुझे इतना ही मांगना है, यही मेरा हक है, इसी में गुजारा करना है. Those things keep running as background noise, and it's all just noise. It's all just judgment. It's nothing more than that, because what we were living back then and what we are living now, it's totally different, and our incomes are different, our energy levels are different, our opinions about society and how much we can grow is totally different. And now the money relationship I see in my daughters, right, I'm kind of trying to learn from them that this is the friendly and fun and nature I want from them. So by mistake also, if I tell one of my daughters, "Yeah, beta, aaj nahi, paise nahi hai aaj," they run and bring their piggy banks. "Ye lo mama, bahut hai hamare paas." So that's the confidence I'm trying to embody in myself, because that's the journey. Ultimately, I think we all should be striving for.
True, very true. And I'm glad you talk about this, that, you're learning from your children. Of course, there will be opinions that, they are children, they don't know, they are not earning, so they don't understand limitations, you know. But I get what you're saying. It's more about imbibing that, that
Energy.
freeness, yeah, the energy to be able to just say, yes, I have more than what I need. I can spend on what I want to, and that kind of creates ripple effects. That's how energy works as well. So I would love for you to really share any example of, the number of clients that you deal with. Has there been any story that you have that you can share with us, where changing the mindset has helped a client change the way they deal with money?
Yes, in fact, this particular example that I'd like to talk about ties both our childhood and the life my client is currently living. So, this client that I'm talking about, he had high double digit number of insurance, right? And my mind blew when I saw the number of insurance he had. It's like with every brand that's available in India, he had one insurance in his name. So I asked him, "What's your story? What is it that you're trying to achieve from insurance? Maybe we can find a way out and maybe we can take more insurance," is what I told him. So then we got to talking, and that's when he told me that his father expired when he was about 19 years old. And, for the last rites of his father, they had all the assets, they had all the money, but they were not aware about the nominations, the will, and all of those things, and how to get that money out, because he was just in college back then. And he had to borrow money for the last rites of his own father. So he was like, every time I got a bonus, I kept on buying one insurance so that my son and my wife are safe. So, you see how we are always mirroring what we believe by buying something, by trying to, fill the gap. So, our decision making when it comes to money, it's all controlled by our fear, by our need for validation, by some kind of shame that we might be hiding. So every time you make a money decision, it is actually one emotion which is getting fulfilled. Not just that you're giving money a job, but you're also trying to validate an inherent emotion which you might not be, even aware about. So this client of mine was trying to control his fear by buying more insurance. That what if? My
Yeah.
son should not see that because it's so painful to hear, and imagine he's lived that, right? So he was very careful about that. Another client of mine, she has grown up in a family where both mother and father were working in government jobs. So she was hell bent on having investments that kind of gives her pension all her life because she is working for an MNC, for a Fortune 500. So she is worried that she will retire without pension. Her parents have pension and they are in their late 80s, both the parents, and she is in her 40s. So she's like, oh my God, I'm just 20 years away from retirement and I need pension on retirement. So, her whole investment thesis all this life has to be only to create pension. And in that, she has forgotten to live her own life. She has squeezed herself to the last possible penny, and it's now showing up on her health also. I mean, so, how you feel about your money, what you want your money to do, it will show up. It will show up in your investments, it will show up in your lifestyle, it will show up in your health. But the money will always find an outlet to be spent. It could be by way of hospital bills, it could be by way of a lavish lifestyle on a yacht, or it could be by way of doing more courses and always learning. So the outlet is there for sure, but we as people, we can choose our means. Do I want to live a healthy lifestyle and spend only on organic food by working out, by, so that's my means? Or am I going to squeeze myself for 40 years and then pay the hospital bills when I'm 60 by way of more medicine, by way of more care? The money will find a way of outlet. We might as well become more emotionally aware and take our decisions because of our freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Monica, because you've touched on so many important things. Like we were talking about how childhood impacts, your money making decision. uh, Making money decisions, or the triggers that come with making the investment decisions or saving decisions or spending decisions, it comes with guilt. It comes with maybe that those little triggers that come in.
Yeah.
Could be because like you shared the example where the parents have, they have a pension but we don't. Like most of us, we don't have anything called a pension that we will live on. It could also be that you see your parents saving every penny through their whole life, and the guilt of you living a carefree life somewhere, that, oh, am I doing it right? Or am I being a spendthrift? Am I not being careful? All these, somewhere I feel hamper a relationship with money. I'll tell you my example. We've grown up with, my mother who has a very free money mindset. Like we've never heard her telling anybody, "I don't have money." She's never said this. Whether she has or not is a different story. But and I think all of us have kind of imbibed that from her, so we never feel scared about, okay, we don't have money, or it's not coming in. It's the mindset that we kind of picked up. So, but the trigger sometimes comes in terms of the guilt of, are we being too carefree? Just picking on these things, I just want you to help us understand, um, how can someone rebuild a healthy relationship with money?
So, firstly, we all have to agree that every penny has some kind of an emotional blueprint. Okay. So, every penny that you're spending, there will be fear, guilt, shame, happiness, joy, one feeling attached to it, right? Uh, Keeping the feeling side apart, there are people who will always feel guilty, who will feel emotional about money. And that also stems up from lack of action, right? For every reaction, there needs to be an equal and opposite action. I'm turning the whole phrase
Yeah.
around, but when it comes to money, if you're feeling the emotion, you need an action against it. And that action is budgeting. I'm sure by now you know I'm a core firm believer of budgeting the money, because once you know how your numbers are flowing, once you know what are the mistakes you're doing with money, once you know where your money is going out and how it's coming in, a lot of clarity can come because now you know your numbers. I mean, if you've seen Shark Tank and if you've seen the big founders at Shark Tank who've walked away with crores of check, they all have one thing in common. They know their numbers, the top line, bottom line, revenue, their cost, everything. They know the complete economics of their business. There's not a single founder who will say, I don't know. my team knows about it. That's not how a business runs. So if you take your personal finance also as your household business, as something that you want to grow on, you have to look at the numbers, how much your money is coming in and how much are you spending. What are you spending on grocery? What are you spending on clothing? What is your education? And year on year, what is the increase? That's how you can, calculate your inflation also. So this is where your the work above the iceberg comes into place, right? That's your 20% that I'm talking about. 80%, yes, mindset, emotion, and everything. But this 20% can actually sink your ship, because this is where you don't know how the numbers are flowing. A lot of people don't know about it. They know, they feel the emotion, but they've not done the work. So if I ask, I've had so many clients, I've asked, how much do you make per month? So they're like, okay, CTC mera itna hai. They're like, okay, how much do you spend? पता नहीं, जितना बैंक में होता है we spend it off. So that's a very common answer I get. So then I send them back and I tell them that for next 2 months, I want you to track every penny or send me your bank statement so that I can track your past 6 months and I can figure out how much you're spending. Because thanks to UPI today, Neetu, all of it is given in our bank statement, where you're swiping and which company, everything is there. You don't even have to remember. Our mothers and grandmothers actually had to write doodh wala 200 rupees, sabzi wala 50 rupees. We don't have to, because we can see all of that in statement. It's our job is much easier, and our grandmothers were doing better budgeting than us. So that is one of the reason why our grandmothers never felt that they did not have money, because they knew, acha bete ki birthday aane wali hai, I need to save 200 rupees for his. So that mathematics was always there as a habit. They were so good with numbers. At least that's what I've seen in both my grandmothers. They were so good. I mean, I would feel ashamed in front of them when I was doing addition and I'm looking at the sky and they're so quick in doing the maths. So I think we have to concentrate a bit on budgeting. Budgeting nowadays is very simple. Every bank is kind of giving you that breakup, that pie chart on their console itself. So you just log in, you look it in your bank app, or there are a lot of free apps available on App Store wherein you can upload your statement and get the gist out of it. So I think once if you start budgeting your money a bit, where your money is going, how you're spending, that clarity will expand from just emotional clarity to kind of a wholesome clarity. And both the sides of the work is required. Your emotional work is also required, and your actual mathematical work is also very much required with money.
Yes, very well said. Because as much as your mindset drives it, being practical also, looking at the practical decision-making ability also goes a long way. So just tying these two, looking at from a money mindset perspective and being more practical in terms of tracking your expenses and understanding what's available for disposal, what needs to be saved, and all that. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 reflective questions one can ask themselves when they are making financial decisions?
Okay. One is find your equation of how much is enough. Like, put a number to it: 5 crore, 10 crore, 25 crore, 500 crores. Put a number to it. We always feel we don't have enough. Then what is your number for enough? Once you find that, you at least have your first goal wherein you can put your blinders on and you can work towards it. And that's why a lot of goals are not achieved, because I'm sure you're aware about the SMART technique, right? Wherein if your goal is not measurable itself, that whole equation falls apart. What are you working for? You're just shooting the arrow in the dark. Even Arjun, when he was learning the bow and stuff, he knew he has to keep his concentration on the eye of the fish. So that's our number of enough will be the eye of the fish, which is going to be our first benchmark. And while you're reaching there, have you taken care of your basics? By basics, I mean to say your roti, kapda, makan, right? So are you taking care of your good food, good health, because without health, the wealth is nothing, literally nothing, because even the healthcare system that we are in today has its limitations. It cannot go beyond that. So, are you taking care of your health? Number one, it's a non-negotiable for me. Even when I'm talking to my clients, I always ask them, do you want to keep some gym subscription every month? How much are you spending on your food? Do you have enough help at home? So spend on all of those. Those are your long-term investments rather, right? So health, roti. Then is your kapda. Is Are you a overspender when it comes to clothing? So I've had only two kind of clients. One who are overspender when it comes to clothes. So they don't have a boundary there, because again, clothes there makes them feel enough. A lot of us have grown up in a childhood where we did not have enough clothes, because for various reasons, and somehow we are trying to fill that gap in our adulthood today by buying at every sale, by buying on every payday, by buying because of Instagram also, because come on, fashion is changing every single day. So
Yes.
that's where your kapda comes. And lastly, your makan. A lot of people feel that buying a home on EMI as soon as you get a salary is a wise thing, but uh, be very, very careful about when you start putting in, buy a home on your EMI. Maybe it's not a very wise investment, and maybe it blocks your next 10-15 years of freedom, that if you're not tied to an EMI, you're free to move across India, you're free to change cities, you're free to take bigger opportunities which you would kind of not take if you're tied to a home. So, if you can answer these very three basic questions related to your safety, security, that is your roti, kapda, makan, a lot of us will feel much, much better, because your basics are sorted. And after this, yes, non negotiable is a good term insurance, a good health insurance, whether you're working in a corporate, whether you're, working for yourself as an entrepreneur. A term and a health insurance are non negotiable, they are not replaceable by anything. Sorry to say, I've also met healers who believe that buying health insurance is detrimental to their energy work, but I don't believe in that. I feel that even as healers, even as doctors, even as mentors, everyone requires an insurance, because that's your safety net. So if it's
Yes.
like your safety net under the trampoline, if you've gone to circus, even the trapeze, on the trapeze, when you have those people, they always have a safety net, right? Those
Yes.
people do believe their capabilities. They know they will not fall. But that safety net is what your insurance is. We are sure we will not fall. We are sure we might never need the insurance, but we still, you got to keep that safety net there. And lastly, the emergency fund. A minimum of 6 months of your expenses, something that can let you come out of any bad situation. There are people who are not quitting job in recession. They are stuck with bad managers. They're not able to just quit and move away from toxic jobs, because they don't have a safety net, because they don't have emergency fund, because they don't know how the next EMI will be paid from. So money should actually be a tool to make you feel powerful, not a tool to squeeze you, make you more fearful about life, kind of contract you more. It should only be an expansion tool at in all given situations.
Thank you. Thank you for those great three reflective questions that you've shared, because I think that kind of sums up everything that, for a person to really look back on their money decisions and then understand where to spend, where to splurge. Can they really splurge versus they must have thought they have to save up everything? So I think this really helps. So just taking this one step forward, now that, if someone is really able to reflect on those questions, what do you think are a couple of money habits that one can create or work on to ensure that they are, they're not losing the track?
In this, the first thing I always tell my client is have some kind of a splurge fund.
Mhm.
5% of your monthly income or 10% of your monthly income, which you are just spending on weird things just for yourself, because that's what will motivate you to go to work the next day. That's what will motivate you to earn better. And that's where all your, pent up energy also comes out. It could be going for shopping for some people. It could be going on very It could be going on like lavish date nights for some couples. It could be going for sports outing for some. It could be very whatever gives you kick, basically, you know.
Yeah.
So one is have a splurge fund, a motivation fund for yourself, okay, which you don't let anyone touch. It's not like कि अच्छा कोई बात नहीं मैं मेरे बच्चों पे ये खर्च कर देती हूँ. नहीं नहीं नहीं. That money should just be for you. You know, be very selfish with that percentage of money. That is one thing which you should have every month. A second habit that I would really, as an or, you know, listener, you can build is do budgeting. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, but please don't wait for tax season to come and then look at your money. You know, 12 month at once. Do it as a monthly when you're a beginner, and then you can move on to quarterly once you get a hang of money and you have kind of a stable income. We as entrepreneurs, we have to do it every month, Neetu. It's non-negotiable. But people who are in salary job and they kind of have a fixed kind of an income every month, please do a quarterly budgeting if monthly your time doesn't allow you. So I call this as a money date, wherein I also on my calendar I have a fixed time every month wherein I'm sitting with all my finances, looking at money, writing my love letter to money, and all of those practices that I do. It takes me about 1.5, 2 hours on a monthly basis, and that's fair enough. That's how I have also refined my relationship with my own money and my net worth, right? So that's another non-negotiable habit with me. And thirdly, again, I'll pick it up from Warren Buffett, wherein he says that as soon as you get your paycheck, the first thing you do is you invest for your future self.
Mm.
Okay. That's the first thing you do, even before you pay your EMIs. I mean, all our EMIs and SIPs hit by 5th of the month, most of us. That's the most normal day that all our SIPs, EMIs, and maids and everything hits. So we still have 3 days in between, second, third, and fourth. These are the 3 days wherein first thing that you should do as soon as you get your salary is plan for your future, keep some money aside for your future. That could be by way of a training which will help you get a better paycheck at your current job. It could be by an SIP, you know, which will help you create a better pension fund for your future. Anything which puts you level up and anything which helps you expand your chadar, that should be
Yeah.
done as soon as you get your salary. Don't wait for end of the month where motivation dies, and you know, keep it in the first week of the month. Take that action month on month. As humans, we overestimate what we can do in a short span, but we underestimate what we can do over a decade. So imagine if you're doing these three things over and over and above for a decade, life will never be the same. It will just going to be much better.
True, true. When I hear you, what comes to my mind is that it's more like making the money work for you than you working for the money.
And yes, I think when you're starting your career, maybe you are working for money, but by the time you are in your, you know, midlife, in your late 30s, you have to give money job. Every penny that you're earning should have a job. It could be paying the rent of the house that you're staying in. It could be paying the salary of people who are working for you. But every penny needs to have a job, and that job should give you results. That's where, you know, money energy is working for you. That's why these people who we are talking about, the billionaires, they work on their PR, right? They look at
Yeah.
PR as their investment. The clothes that they wear is part of the PR. The way they talk is part of their PR. The surgeries they get on their faces is a part of the PR. So everything is PR and image makeover for them. But we look it as kharcha ho gaya, waste ho gaya.
That's what the trolls also say that, right? You have the money, that's why you're spending on it.
I think they are spending, and that's why they have more money. That's how money energy works, right? It can't be kept stagnant.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. There's so many gems of, knowledge that you've shared. I'm sure all our listeners who either have challenges managing money or have certain emotions that are attached with money and they're not able to understand how to deal with it. Our conversation today must have helped in some form. That they start thinking in a different direction, and that probably is what the intent we had with bringing in money as a topic today, because it's an ocean. Digging into money mindset might take us a few episodes on the podcast, going into every emotion, every aspect of it. But just as a closing note, if I would ask you for your expertise on One truth about money that you want to share with people that people actually don't know, what would that be?
Truth about money is money management is not as difficult as it looks. We all have wounds when it comes to money management because my theory behind it is that we were all living in a non-digital world. That's when our mothers and our grandmothers were managing the money, right? They had the ghar ki chabi, the tijori ki chabi. They would keep the cash, they would keep the jewelry, and then came the digital world wherein everything went into bank account, bank locker, and that's when the men started having the control over the money. They started keeping the money, and that's where then came the broken generation of our mothers, a lot of them who were unaware about banking system, unaware about internet banking, unaware about the digital world of money, the digital world of SIPs and stuff, right? So, and that's where our wounds come from, because our mothers did not manage that money, because our mothers did not have, a lot of our mothers, not all, but a lot of us did not have access to that part of the money management. We all always felt that women cannot manage money.
Mm.
Okay, but I think managing money is a core feminine job, because you need to have that emotions of nurturing, growing, which inherently only women have. Men are more adrenaline, they are more like traders, and they're very aggressive and very active. That energy is also required, but we become better money managers because we are patient, because we are nurturing, because we can do that thing again and again and again, which requires, these are our core natural instincts that we have as women. So I think now it's 2025. It's time we take charge of our own money. We learn money management. We don't need to be fully dependent on our father, on our brother, on our friend. We are in the position to ask questions, and we don't ask because we are still not very, very literate enough. So take charge of your financial literacy. It's not very difficult. I was also studying to be a doctor, and then I switched field, and now here I am, as a financial planner. So there are a lot of parts of money management which is very easy, which is very doable. Do it. Please do it. You'll feel so empowered. And it's not difficult at all. I mean, tech is doing all your work. So we should actually leverage tech rather than just feeling scared about all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some great insights, great tips, and I would say eye opener when it comes to money. And some of the points that you touched have been, I think people are aware of it, but they don't acknowledge it. They don't accept it, and they don't even implement changes that they are supposed to do. So I'm glad we had this discussion, Monica, and I'm really grateful that you made it on the podcast and we had this discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neetu.
I hope today's episode helped you explore your own money mindset and gave you some reflective questions that will help you find your way forward. This is your host, Neetu Gambhir at the Iceberg Theory Podcast. See you in the next one.